where next for the EU? Not just the Eurozone, but the European Union as a political body. What do they do now? Where next?
Yeah, well, the best thing that we can do to damage the EU, but by the way, I think the EU is a malign, anti-democratic institution that wasn't just bad for the UK, but is bad for all its member states. I don't share. Sorry, go on.
No, I just said absolutely, because there are those people who argue that it's actually just us that aren't suited to it. But I do believe genuinely that no country should be subject to the EU at all.
No, exactly. And so I'm digressing, but I was very surprised by Daniel Hannon's eulogy almost to the EU on the 29th of January 2020, which was our last day in Parliament there. He spoke very fondly of the EU and wished them all the very best of luck. I don't. I see them as they're not our friends and partners in the EU, as the Prime Minister keeps. I'm not EU as distinct from Europe, by the way. Let me just make that clear before people watching this confuse the two. Obviously, we've got friends and partners in Europe, but we don't have any friends and partners in the EU. So I wish the EU ill. I want the EU to collapse. I want it to cease to exist. I want member states to take back control of their sovereignty. And the best way I think the UK can do that is to make a success of Brexit, because it'll show all those member states that are suffering so badly under the EU's hegemony that they should leave.
Yeah, absolutely, and I think a lot of what Mrs. Thatcher said in the Bruges speech in 1988 is certainly ringing true now about sovereignty of nations and how further integration, which obviously led to the Maastricht Treaty and then later Nice and Lisbon treaties, which has all came true. And I think you're absolutely right about Brexit.
I actually did have a question for Ben about the the trade treaty that Boris signed. I think that when it comes to the Northern Ireland, or basically the ERG in their statement kept saying that things could be changed as long as we had a robust and prepared government in the future. Do you think that we will have a government that will be willing to stand up for British interests when it comes to perhaps reviewing the fishing agreement and things like that?
Well, the great redeeming feature of the Trade and Cooperation Agreement, as distinct from the Withdrawal Agreement, is that we can terminate the TCA. Mm-hmm. The WA has no termination mechanisms in it. The Northern Irish Protocol can be overturned by a vote in Stormont, but even then it's not clear what happens thereafter. But the Withdrawal Agreement itself cannot be terminated. The TCA can be terminated on 12 months' notice. And if we get a government, and it's actually, Boris Johnson can do this. Let's just be fair to Boris Johnson for a second. He picked up a poison chalice when he became Prime Minister. He then had to win an election to get the majority to do what was required. By then, he backed himself into a corner on the Withdrawal Agreement. And he first had that deadline of 31st October, then he had a deadline of 31st January to get us out. Then he had a self-imposed but necessary deadline of 31st December to leave the transition period. So he always had a clock ticking down on him. He no longer has a clock ticking down on him. And he can now, at leisure, get the United Kingdom ready to terminate the TCA. And the things that he can do are very optimistic and forward-looking and encouraging, such as making proper money available for the fishing industry to build boats, to train apprentices, to build the factories that are required to process the fish. Get them utterly ready for a termination of the fishing arrangements with the EU. Get our financial services industry absolutely ready. And there's so much that we could do to protect our financial services industry and take the fight to Paris and Brussels, to Paris and Frankfurt, sorry, forgive me, to Paris and Frankfurt. Imposing, for example, capital adequacy requirements on loans made to European Union member states, making sure that their branches that operate in this country now are turned into subsidiaries and fully capitalized, getting our exporters ready to pay tariffs. You know, we will have a surplus. The government will collect a surplus in tariffs if we end up in a trade war with the EU. And a lot of that can be used to mitigate any adverse consequences our own exporters may suffer. And then on top of that, we could cut VAT, we could do all sorts of things to supercharge the UK economy in the face of terminating the TCA. So I think you should do all of that, all of which is good for the UK. Nothing could be better for the UK than to be able to stand on its own 2 feet without the need of leaning on the European Union. So sorry, that was a very long answer to your simple question, Alice. But I think the government this government and a future government, if this one won't do it, should get the UK absolutely ready to terminate that TCA, get out of the level playing field, get out of the fishing arrangements, get out of contributions to the European Defence Fund. I don't know if you're aware, Alice, but we have signed into paying, I think it's about 400 million a year. No, that's wrong. Forgive me. It's about 80 million a year into the European Defence Fund via something called Horizon Europe, which we can talk about separately if you want to. But I mean, you know, it's just crazy. So the government should get ready to terminate it.
That's true. But how many of those things do you think would those things still be able to be enacted if we still were signed up to the withdrawal agreement? Or do you think that in order for Britain truly to be able to flourish and prosper economically, we would need to repudiate the withdrawal agreement?
Well, I think the withdrawal agreement, the only way out of the Northern Irish Protocol is to repudiate the withdrawal agreement. So there are 3 subsisting obligations, principal obligations under the withdrawal agreement. The first is the Northern Irish Protocol. The other is our commitments to the European Investment Bank and the 500 billion joint and several guarantee that we've got, and also the provisions for the protection of EU citizen rights in the UK. I'm not too worried about the latter 2, actually. It's always struck me as really odd that we've given up 7 billion of our profits in the EIB, but we remain liable for 17% of its balance sheet on a joint and several basis. That never really made any sense to me. But I think we can live with all of that. The thing that really exercises my mind in the withdrawal agreement is the Northern Irish Protocol. And there's no way out of that unless the government just repudiates it. But that's why I think he should have really grasped the political implications of what von der Leyen and the EU did on Friday night.
Yeah.
You know, he should really grasp it. And he has the moral high ground now to terminate it. And it's nonsense. It's nonsense to say we can't break international law. What do you think Tony Blair did when he declared war on Iraq in 2003? That was a breach of international law, and hundreds of thousands of people died, and Blair still gets airtime.
Yeah.
You know?
Well,
Yeah, absolutely, and I think you made a very good point there. I was very annoyed when the internal markets bill was dropped, because I think that would have offered the protection that's necessary. But I do think now the only option is to terminate the Northern Irish Protocol to go forward, really. And I think that is going to be key.